Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness, a toy rescued, a floor crawled, a moment shared, can change a life forever. Ethan Ward was the kind of man whose name made people stand a little straighter. He had built an empire from nothing. Real estate, tech, investments, everything he touched turned into money. His picture was in magazines. His interviews filled business pages. His calendar was packed tighter than most people's lives. But for all the luxury cars, private jets, and grand offices, there was one thing missing: time. He rarely had any for his family. His 5-year-old son Oliver was growing up fast, and Ethan hardly noticed. Most mornings, the boy woke up after Ethan had already left for work, and by the time he came home, Oliver was asleep. His wife had passed away 2 years ago, and since then, Ethan had buried himself in work. He told himself it was for Oliver to build a future, to make sure his son never lacked anything. But deep down, he knew it was also to escape the pain. On a gray Saturday morning, Ethan's assistant reminded him that he had promised Oliver a daddy day. Ethan sighed. There were meetings waiting, calls to make, deals to close. But then he looked at the small drawing on his desk, a messy picture of 2 stick figures holding hands, with the word Dad written in wobbly letters. He couldn't remember when Oliver had given it to him. Guilt twisted in his chest. So he canceled a meeting, put on casual clothes that still looked expensive, and told his driver they were going out. Oliver, excited beyond words, ran around the house yelling, "Daddy's coming with me!" It was a rare sound, pure happiness. Ethan felt awkward at first, unsure how to act. He was used to controlling rooms full of executives, not a child's endless questions about cartoons and toy cars. When the driver asked where to go, Ethan didn't have an answer. He never really ate at small places. Most of his meals were in boardrooms or luxury restaurants where everyone knew his name. So when Oliver pointed out a small, cozy diner on the corner of the street, Ethan hesitated. The place looked ordinary, with a simple sign that read Maggie's Diner. But Oliver's eyes sparkled. And that was enough. They walked inside, and the smell of pancakes and coffee filled the air. It was warm, a little noisy, but alive. Families talked over breakfast, a baby laughed somewhere, and an old jukebox played a soft tune. Ethan looked around like he'd stepped into another world. The tables were plain, the chairs a bit worn, but there was something comforting about it all. A young waitress with tired eyes and a friendly smile came over. Her name tag said, "Mia, good morning." "Table for 2?" she asked brightly. Ethan gave a polite nod and followed her to a booth by the window. Oliver climbed onto the seat, pressing his face against the glass to watch cars go by. Ethan opened his phone, already checking emails. "Can I get you both something to drink?" Mia asked. "Coffee." "Black," Ethan said without looking up. "And for you, sweetheart?" She turned to Oliver. "Chocolate milk," he said proudly. "Coming right up," she smiled and walked away. Ethan typed away while Oliver tried to get his attention. "Daddy, look at my car," the boy said, holding up his small red toy. Ethan glanced up for half a second, smiled weakly, and went back to typing. "That's nice, buddy," he said. But Oliver was too full of energy to sit quietly. He zoomed the toy car around the table, making engine noises. Vroom, vroom. The car bumped into Ethan's coffee cup and nearly tipped it over. "Oliver, please," Ethan said sharply. The boy froze, his excitement fading. Ethan sighed and rubbed his forehead. "Just eat your food when it comes, okay?" Mia returned with their drinks, placing them gently on the table. She noticed Oliver's downcast face and the phone in Ethan's hand. "You like cars, huh?" she asked the boy softly. Oliver nodded. "You know, my son loves cars too. He says the red ones go fastest." That made Oliver smile a little. When the food arrived, pancakes for Oliver and toast for Ethan, the little boy was cheerful again. He played with his car between bites, and soon one careless move sent the toy tumbling off the table. It rolled across the floor and disappeared under another booth. Oliver gasped and tried to reach for it, but it was too far. Before Ethan could say anything, Mia noticed and came over. "Uh-oh, rescue mission," she said with a grin. Then, without hesitation, she got down on her hands and knees to look under the table. Oliver giggled and followed her, crawling on the floor beside her. "Found it," she announced, holding up the car. The boy clapped his hands in delight. Ethan watched in surprise. A billionaire's child crawling on a diner floor wasn't something he'd ever imagined. He was about to tell Oliver to stand up to stop making a scene, but something stopped him. The sight of Mia in her worn shoes and messy bun, laughing with his son, didn't look embarrassing. It looked real, warm, human. People at nearby tables smiled at the sight. Even the cook behind the counter chuckled softly. The whole moment felt oddly pure, a slice of life that money couldn't buy. Ethan found himself lowering his phone slowly, the glow of the screen fading in his hand. When Mia handed the toy back to Oliver, he hugged it to his chest. "Thank you," he said, his face shining. "You're welcome, champ," she said warmly, brushing off her apron. "You gotta keep an eye on those speedy cars, they like to run away." Ethan wanted to say something, maybe to thank her, but the words didn't come. Instead, he just sat there, silent, watching his son play with a kind of joy that didn't fit into his carefully controlled life. For a long time, he'd thought success was about control, power, and numbers. But sitting in that small diner, surrounded by laughter and the smell of pancakes, he felt something strange, a tug in his chest he couldn't quite name. When they finished their meal, Mia brought the check. Ethan reached for his wallet, slipping a few extra bills inside. "Thank you," he said, his voice softer this time. "You're very good with kids," she smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "They're just little people who need to be seen," she said. "Most grown-ups forget that." As Ethan led Oliver out of the diner, the boy held his hand tightly, skipping beside him. "Daddy, can we come here again?" Oliver asked. Ethan hesitated, glancing back through the glass door. Inside, Mia was cleaning tables, humming quietly to herself. The light from the window caught the dust in the air, making it shimmer like tiny stars. "Yeah," Ethan said finally, smiling faintly. "We'll come again." The car door closed, the city sounds faded, but something had shifted inside him. He didn't know it yet, but that small moment, a waitress, crawling on the floor with his son, had planted the first seed of change. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan Ward didn't feel like a billionaire, he just felt like a father. Mia had been working at Maggie's diner for almost 3 years. Every morning, she tied her hair back, put on her faded uniform, and told herself it was going to be a good day, even when her body ached and her feet hurt. Life wasn't easy. She was a single mother to a 6-year-old boy named Noah, who stayed with her neighbor while she worked. Mia loved her son more than anything, and every cup of coffee she poured, every plate she carried, was for him. That day, the diner was busy. It was late morning, sunlight streaming through the windows and bouncing off the silver counters. The smell of pancakes and coffee filled the air. Mia moved from table to table, her smile practiced but genuine. Then she noticed a man and a little boy sitting by the window. The man looked out of place. Expensive watch, clean suit, the kind of confidence that comes from having more money than time. The boy, on the other hand, looked like any other child, bright eyes, messy hair. Full of life, Mia went over with her notepad in hand. The man barely looked up from his phone. The boy greeted her first, his voice full of excitement as he asked for chocolate milk. Mia couldn't help but smile. "Chocolate milk coming right up," she said. Then she turned to the man. "And for you, sir?" "Coffee." "Black," he said without looking at her. She noticed the way the boy tried to talk to his dad, showing him his toy car, but the man only half listened. Mia had seen this scene 100 times. Parents too busy, kids too lonely. It always made her heart ache a little, but she never judged. Life was hard in different ways for everyone. When she returned with their drinks, the boy was already driving his toy car around the salt and pepper shakers, making little vroom sounds. She set the chocolate milk in front of him and said, "That's a fast one, huh? I bet it wins every race." The boy's face lit up. "It does. It's the fastest car ever," he said proudly. His father gave a quick smile without looking up. The food came soon after, and Mia carried the plates carefully, balancing them like she had 1,000 times before. She placed the pancakes in front of the boy and the eggs in front of the man. "Enjoy your meal," she said, then turned to help another table. But just a few minutes later, she heard a small gasp, the kind that every waitress recognizes. Something had fallen. She turned to see the little boy looking under the table, panic written all over his face. His toy car had slipped off the edge and disappeared somewhere on the floor. Mia smiled softly. "Uh-oh," she said, walking over. "Did it try to run away?" The boy nodded sadly. "It went under there." Without even thinking, Mia got down on her knees. The floor was cool and a little sticky from syrup, but she didn't care. She peered under the table, moving aside a dropped napkin and a crumpled straw wrapper. The boy crouched down beside her, his small hands pressed against the floor. "I see it," he said excitedly. "It's over there." Mia laughed. "All right, partner, we can reach it if we work together." She stretched her arm, her fingers brushing against the car, but it rolled farther away. "Ah, it's a tricky one," she said, smiling at the boy's giggle. So she moved to the next table, ducking low to get a better angle. People nearby started watching, amused by the sight, the waitress crawling on the floor, the little boy right beside her, both laughing like old friends. Ethan. The boy's father put down his coffee cup. He didn't know whether to be embarrassed or impressed. No one in his world ever crawled on the floor, not even when they dropped something. He almost told her to stop, that he could just buy another toy, but something about her determination stopped him. She wasn't doing it because she had to. She was doing it because she cared. Mia finally spotted the shiny red car stuck near a chair leg. "Aha! Got it," she said triumphantly, holding it up like a trophy. The boy clapped his hands and let out a joyful squeal. She handed it to him, smiling at his excitement. "You've got to keep your eye on that speedster," she said playfully. "It's got a mind of its own." The whole diner seemed lighter after that. A few people chuckled quietly. One old man even said, "That's some service, young lady." Mia just laughed, brushing off her apron as she stood up. The boy looked up at her like she was a superhero. "Thank you," he said sincerely. She winked. "Any time, champ." Ethan's gaze followed her as she walked back to the counter. He noticed the small rip in her shoe, the tired slump of her shoulders, but also the kindness in her movements. When she smiled at another table, it was real, not the kind of polite fake smile he saw in business meetings. He felt something shift inside him, a tiny flicker of guilt. His son had laughed more in the last 5 minutes than he had in months. And it wasn't because of him, it was because of her, Oliver. His son kept talking about Mia as he played with his car again. "Daddy, she's funny. She's not scared to get dirty." Ethan forced a small laugh. "Yeah, she's nice," he said, but the words came out softer than he expected. From behind the counter, Mia could feel his eyes on her. She didn't mind. She was used to all kinds of people, some rude, some kind, some who barely noticed she existed. But there was something different about this man. He looked like someone who'd forgotten how to relax, how to just be human. She hoped the laughter she brought to his son reminded him of something important. That happiness wasn't made of money or success, but small moments like these, as she passed their table again. She saw the boy driving his car around his plate, making sound effects. "That car's going to need gas soon," she teased. "Better stop for pancakes." The boy laughed so hard that syrup almost spilled. Ethan caught himself smiling too, a real, unguarded smile he hadn't felt in a long time. When it came time for the check, Mia placed it gently on the table. "You've got a great kid," she said. "He's got your eyes." Ethan looked up at her, surprised by the comment. "Thanks," he said quietly. "You're good with him." She shrugged. "Kids just want someone to notice them. The world's too busy these days." Her words hit him deeper than she knew. For a man who built a billion-dollar empire, he suddenly felt small, not in a bad way, but in a way that made him see himself clearly for the first time in years. When they left, Mia watched them go, the boy skipping beside his tall, serious father. She didn't know who they were or what their lives were like. To her, they were just another family passing through, another story in a long day of work. But for Ethan, something had changed. As the door closed behind them, and the diner's bell jingled softly. Mia went back to clearing tables. She didn't know that the moment she crawled on that floor would stay in Ethan's memory forever. That simple act of kindness, of meeting a child where he was, had quietly cracked open the heart of a man who thought he had everything. And as she wiped down the table, humming to herself, she smiled without knowing why. Maybe it was just another ordinary morning, but somewhere out there, a billionaire father was driving home with his son, and for the first time, wasn't thinking about money or meetings. He was thinking about a waitress, a toy car, and the sound of his child's laughter filling a little diner on a sunny day. The next weekend came faster than Ethan expected, though the days in between felt heavier than usual. He kept thinking about that small diner, the smell of coffee, the laughter, the way his son's eyes had sparkled when the waitress Mia crawled under the tables to rescue his toy. It was such a small moment, yet it replayed in his mind like a song he couldn't turn off all week. Ethan's life had been its usual blur. Meetings, calls, contracts, and polite smiles that didn't mean anything. He sat in his high-rise office surrounded by glass and silence. But for the first time, it felt cold. Every time he looked at the picture of Oliver on his desk, the one from his 4th birthday, he noticed how much smaller his son looked. He realized with a sharp pang that he hadn't taken a new photo in almost 2 years. One evening, as he sat by the window with a drink in hand, he thought about Mia's words, "Kids just want someone to notice them." It had been such a simple sentence, but it hit him like a truth he had been running from. He was providing everything for his son, except the one thing that mattered most, himself. The next morning, Ethan had a rare Saturday free. Oliver came running into his study holding a drawing of a red car. "Daddy, look! It's the same car from the diner," he said proudly. Ethan smiled, putting aside his laptop. "That's great, buddy. You really liked that place, didn't you?" Oliver nodded quickly. "Can we go there again? Maybe the lady will be there too." Ethan hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Sure, let's go." When they arrived, Maggie's diner looked just the same. Warm, busy, alive. The bell above the door chimed as they entered. The smell of pancakes greeted them again, and for the first time, Ethan didn't feel out of place. Oliver spotted their booth by the window and ran toward it. Ethan followed, his steps slower but lighter than last time. Mia noticed them right away. "Well, look who's back," she said cheerfully, carrying a tray of mugs. Oliver grinned from ear to ear. "Hi, I brought my car again," he announced, holding it up proudly. Mia laughed. "I see that. You two want the usual?" Ethan smiled slightly. "Yes, please. And maybe add some apple pie this time." As Mia walked away, Ethan watched her move from table to table, greeting regular customers, chatting with old ladies, handing out coffee refills like it was second nature. She looked tired, but there was a warmth around her that filled the room. When she came back with their drinks, Ethan noticed her phone tucked into her apron pocket. It started buzzing, and she quickly stepped aside to answer it. Her voice softened. "Hey, sweetheart," she said quietly. "Yeah, Mommy's still at work?" "No, baby, you can't have ice cream before dinner. I'll be home soon, okay?" Her tone was gentle but weary, like someone balancing love and exhaustion. She ended the call and turned, only to see Ethan looking at her. For a second, she looked embarrassed, but Ethan gave her a kind smile. "Your son?" he asked. Mia nodded, tucking the phone away. "Yeah, he's 6. Keeps me on my toes." She laughed lightly, though there was tiredness behind her eyes. Ethan looked down at his coffee, unsure what to say. "You do a good job," he finally said. "With kids, I mean. You're patient." Mia shrugged. "Kids don't need perfect parents. They just need someone who shows up." The words landed heavier than she knew. Ethan nodded slowly, feeling something inside him tighten. He had always told himself he was doing enough, providing money, a good house, good schools. But what if he had been missing the real point? Oliver interrupted their moment by spilling a little syrup on his plate, laughing as he tried to clean it with napkins. Mia helped him quickly, still smiling. "Don't worry, I've seen way worse," she said playfully. Oliver giggled and asked, "Do you clean up after your son too?" "All the time," she said. "But one day, He'll clean up after me." They both laughed, and Ethan found himself smiling again, really smiling. It wasn't forced or polite. It was real. After their meal, Mia went to help another table, and Ethan watched her again. He noticed how she greeted each person like they mattered, the old man reading a newspaper, the couple sharing pancakes, even the kids making a mess. She treated everyone with respect, like she saw something special in them. It was so different from the world Ethan lived in, where everyone wanted something from him. When she returned to clear their plates, Ethan said, "You seem to really love your job." She chuckled. "Love might be a strong word, but it's honest work. I meet good people. Some of them just need a smile to feel better." He nodded thoughtfully. "You must see a lot of people come and go." "I do," she said softly. "And sometimes I think about how every person sitting at a table has their own story. Some are happy, some are broken, some just need a reminder that kindness still exists." Ethan looked at her, wondering if she somehow saw right through him. He had walked in here as a man used to control and power. But in this small diner, surrounded by the smell of pancakes and laughter, he felt more human than he had in years before they left. "Oliver," asked Mia, "can I give you a drawing?" He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, a messy sketch of Mia himself, and his dad sitting at the diner table. "That's you," he said proudly, pointing to the stick figure with the ponytail. Mia's eyes softened as she took it. "That's the best tip I've ever gotten," she said gently. Ethan felt something twist in his chest again, that strange mix of warmth and guilt, as they got up to leave. Mia smiled at Ethan. "You've got a great boy," she said. "He's full of light. Don't let the world dim it." Ethan looked at her for a moment, the noise of the diner fading around him. "I won't," he said quietly. "Thank you." On the drive home, Oliver fell asleep in the back seat, his toy car still clutched in his hand. Ethan glanced at him through the rearview mirror. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't think about work or deals or meetings. He thought about Mia's tired smile, the way she had said kids just need someone to show up, and how much truth lived in that simple line. When they got home, Ethan carried his sleeping son to bed and tucked him in gently. Then he sat there for a long while, just watching him breathe. He noticed the small details, the way Oliver's hair curled at the ends, the soft rise and fall of his chest. He couldn't remember the last time he had really looked at his son like this. He thought of Mia's life, the phone call, tiredness in her eyes, the strength it took to keep going every day for her child. And he thought about himself, how he had all the money in the world, but had forgotten how to truly live. That night, as the city lights blinked through the window, Ethan made a quiet promise to himself. He didn't say it out loud, but he felt it deeply. He was going to show up. For Oliver, for the moments that truly mattered, he lay in bed thinking about that waitress who crawled under tables for a child she didn't know, and realized that in doing so, she had lifted something much heavier off his heart. That night was quiet in Ethan Ward's big house. The city lights sparkled outside his tall windows, but inside the rooms felt empty. For years, Ethan had filled that emptiness with work, meetings, numbers, success. But after visiting the diner again and seeing Mia's simple kindness, the silence around him felt heavier than ever. He walked past Oliver's room and stopped at the door. The little boy was fast asleep, his red toy car still in his hand, his blanket halfway off the bed. Ethan smiled softly and walked in. He gently pulled the blanket up and brushed his son's hair away from his forehead. Oliver stirred but didn't wake up. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, his heart caught between pride and sadness. He looked around the room, shelves filled with expensive toys. A race car bed, posters on the wall. He had bought Oliver everything a child could want. But as he sat there, he realized that most of those toys were untouched. Oliver didn't need more things. He needed more time. Ethan leaned back in the chair near the window, his thoughts drifting. He thought about Mia crawling on the floor to get Oliver's toy. She hadn't cared that people were watching or that her hands got dirty. She had simply done it for his son's smile. That single moment kept replaying in his mind, not because of the action itself, but because of what it meant. She had met Oliver where he was, not above him, not beyond him. Right there on the floor, at his level. That image made something inside Ethan break quietly. For years, he had been living above everything, above people, emotions, and even his own child. He was always standing tall, looking down at life through glass walls and luxury windows. But that night, he began to understand that love wasn't about standing tall. It was about kneeling down. He turned off the lights and sat beside his son. "I'm sorry, buddy," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I didn't know how much I was missing." Oliver moved in his sleep, clutching his toy car tighter. Ethan smiled sadly. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "tomorrow will be different." The next morning, Oliver woke up early and ran to Ethan's room. "Daddy, can we go to the park?" he shouted, bouncing on the bed. Ethan blinked awake, surprised. His usual instinct was to say, "Not today, I have work." But today was different. He remembered his promise from the night before. "You know what?" he said, sitting up. "Yeah, let's go." Oliver's eyes widened with joy. "Really?" he asked, almost not believing it. Ethan nodded. "Really?" At the park. The sun was bright, and the air smelled like freshly cut grass. Children ran everywhere, laughing and chasing each other. Parents sat on benches, chatting or watching their kids play. Ethan and Oliver found a quiet spot near the sandbox. "Can you help me build a castle?" Oliver asked, holding out a small bucket. Ethan looked at the sand for a second, hesitating. His expensive shoes weren't meant for sand, and the idea of sitting on the ground felt strange, almost foreign. But then he remembered Mia again, how she had knelt down without a second thought. He smiled, took off his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and sat down beside his son. "All right, let's build the biggest one here," he said. Oliver laughed with delight. "You have to make the towers," he said, handing his dad a bucket of sand. Ethan filled it, flipped it over, and carefully lifted the bucket. The tower held. Oliver clapped. "See, Daddy? You're good at this?" Ethan laughed, feeling a spark of happiness he hadn't felt in years. For once, he wasn't checking his phone or thinking about work. He was just there in the moment with his son. They built towers, dug moats, and even added small roads for Oliver's toy car to drive around the castle. A few people passing by smiled at the sight of the well-dressed man sitting in the sand, laughing with his little boy. Ethan didn't care. For the first time, he didn't care how he looked or what people thought. After a while, Oliver leaned against him, tired but happy. "This is fun," he said softly. "You should come to the park every day." Ethan's heart twisted. "I'll try, buddy," he said. "I really will." When they got home, Ethan made pancakes himself, a small disaster, but Oliver thought it was the funniest thing ever. Flour covered the counter, the floor, and even Ethan's face. They both laughed until their stomachs hurt. Later that evening, after putting Oliver to bed, Ethan sat alone on the balcony. The city stretched out beneath him, lights flickering like stars. But for the first time, the view didn't fill him with pride. It filled him with reflection. He thought about Mia again. He could almost hear her voice. Kids don't need perfect parents. They just need someone who shows up. He realized that Mia's strength came from love, not wealth, not comfort, not status. She worked long hours and still had the patience to smile, to care, to connect. And all this time, he had been chasing things that didn't matter, while missing the person who mattered most, his son. That night, Ethan didn't open his laptop. He didn't check his phone. Instead, he took out an old photo album, one he hadn't touched since his wife passed away. Page after page, he saw moments he had forgotten. His wedding day, Oliver's first steps, their first vacation together. Each picture felt like a doorway to a time when his heart had been lighter. He stopped at one photo Oliver as a baby, sitting on the floor with blocks scattered around him. Ethan had been kneeling beside him in the picture, smiling. He didn't even remember that moment. How long had it been since he'd done something that simple? He closed the album gently and sat there, thinking. He wanted to thank Mia not for serving them food or finding a toy, but for waking him up, for reminding him of something he'd almost forgotten, being human. The next few days, Ethan made small changes. He had breakfast with Oliver every morning, even if it meant being late to work. He turned off his phone during dinner. He started reading bedtime stories again, even when he stumbled over the funny voices. Each little moment brought a warmth back into their house that had been missing for years. One evening, as Oliver played on the floor with his cars, Ethan joined him again. He sat cross-legged on the carpet, letting the boy drive cars over his arm and make vroom sounds. Oliver laughed so hard he almost fell over. Ethan laughed too, really laughed. The sound filled the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. When Oliver finally fell asleep, Ethan sat there quietly, the toy cars still scattered around him. He realized that happiness wasn't something you built like a company or bought with money. It was something small, something soft found in laughter in tiny moments. In getting your hands dirty to make someone else smile. For years, he had been climbing higher and higher, thinking success meant rising above everything. But now he understood. Sometimes you have to get down on the floor to see what truly matters. And as he turned off the lights and looked at his sleeping son, Ethan whispered, "Thank you, Mia," because without knowing it, that one act of kindness, a waitress crawling on the floor for a lost toy, had brought a billionaire father back down to earth, and closer to his child than ever before. Weeks passed since Ethan Ward's small but life-changing visit to Maggie's diner. The memory of Mia crawling on the floor to help Oliver had settled deep in his mind. It's like a seed waiting to grow. Every day, he noticed little things differently: the laughter of children outside his office window, the gentle patience of a coworker, even the simple way Oliver asked for attention. It was as if the world had shifted slightly, showing him the things he had been too busy to see before. One Saturday morning, Ethan decided it was time to return to the diner. This time, he left his phone in the car. No calls, no emails, no notifications, nothing to pull him away from the moment he intended to live fully. Oliver clutched his red toy car in one hand, skipping excitedly beside him. "I can't wait to see her," he said, his little voice filled with anticipation. Ethan smiled, a genuine wide smile. He felt lighter than he had in years. As they entered Maggie's diner, the bell above the door jingled. Mia looked up from wiping down a table, her ponytail swinging as she glanced toward the entrance. "Well, if it isn't our regulars," she called warmly. Oliver ran toward her, waving his toy car. "Hi, I brought my car," he shouted. Mia laughed, crouching slightly to meet his height. "I see that. Let's park it carefully this time," she joked, making the boy giggle. Ethan noticed something different about her this time. She seemed to glow with a quiet strength and joy, despite the obvious long hours she worked. Her patience and warmth were not only for Oliver, but for every single person in the diner. The way she smiled at customers, gently handled complaints, and managed the busy space effortlessly, it was inspiring. Ethan realized that the most valuable things in life weren't money or status, but dedication, kindness, and love. They were seated at their usual booth, by the window. Oliver immediately set up his toy car for a race across the table. Mia brought their drinks, placing them gently in front of them. "I thought we'd try something special today," she said, sliding a small slice of apple pie toward Ethan and a chocolate chip cookie for Oliver. The boy's eyes sparkled. "Thank you, Mia," he said. Ethan sat back and watched Mia interact with other customers. She moved with confidence and care, greeting familiar faces, remembering orders, and laughing softly with a group of children who were making a mess in the corner. She treated everyone with the same respect and patience, regardless of their age, wealth, or background. Ethan felt a pang in his heart. He had spent so much time climbing the ladder of success that he had forgotten what real human connection felt like. When Mia returned to clear their table, Ethan took a deep breath. "Mia," he said, his voice careful, "I just want to thank you. You reminded me of what really matters." She looked at him curiously, wiping her hands on her apron. "Oh," she asked softly. Ethan continued, "It's silly, maybe, but watching you play with Oliver, helping him, caring so naturally, it changed the way I see things. I've been so focused on work and money, I almost forgot how to be a father, how to be present. You reminded me that children don't just need things, they need us." Mia's eyes softened and she gave a small smile. "I'm glad," she said. "Sometimes all it takes is noticing a child, spending a little time with them. The rest falls into place." Oliver tugged at Ethan's sleeve, pulling him back into the present. "Daddy, come race my car," he shouted, setting up a track across the table. Ethan laughed, pushing the toy car forward. For the first time in years, he wasn't worried about emails, contracts, or meetings. He was just a dad, racing cars with his son, feeling the joy of the moment. Time seemed to stretch in the diner. Customers came and went, but Ethan didn't notice. He was completely immersed in the world of his son, a world filled with imagination, laughter, and love. He realized how much he had been missing. The floorboards, the smell of coffee, the casual chatter, it was all part of a life he had ignored for far too long. When it was time to leave, Ethan stood and handed Mia a tip. Not because it was expected, but because he genuinely wanted to show appreciation. "Thank you for everything," he said sincerely. "You helped me see what I was missing." Mia's face softened into a warm smile. "You're welcome, Mr. Ward," she said kindly. "And remember, it's never too late to change the way you live." On the drive home, Oliver chattered endlessly about the day, describing every detail: the pie, the cookies, the toy car race. Ethan listened, truly listened, for the first time, without distraction. He felt a quiet happiness, a kind of peace he hadn't known existed. Back home, Ethan continued his new routine. Mornings were for breakfast with Oliver, even if it meant making pancakes himself. Afternoons were for walks, building sandcastles in the yard, or simply reading books together. He didn't check his phone constantly or think about work during these moments. Instead, he focused entirely on his son, letting go of the pressures and expectations that had controlled him for years at night. After Oliver went to sleep, Ethan would sit on the balcony, thinking about the world around him. He realized that wealth and success were meaningless without love and presence. Money could buy comfort, status could buy respect, but neither could buy connection, joy, or the simple warmth of shared laughter. Ethan also thought about Mia and the lessons she had unknowingly taught him. Her strength, patience, and kindness reminded him that life's most valuable moments were often the simplest. Meeting someone where they are, offering help without expectation, and showing love in small, genuine ways, these were the things that truly mattered. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan's life transformed. His employees noticed the change too. He was calmer, more patient, more attentive. Business meetings didn't consume his every thought. Instead, he focused on balancing work and life, ensuring he had time for Oliver himself and the simple pleasures he had long ignored. One afternoon, Ethan decided to call Mia. "I just wanted to thank you again," he said, "for everything you did, for showing me how to be a better father and a better person." Mia laughed softly on the other end. "I didn't do anything special," she said. "You just had to notice. But I'm glad it helped." Ethan smiled. "It did. More than I can say." Over the following months, Ethan and Oliver returned to Maggie's diner regularly. But now, it was more than just a place to eat. It was a place of connection, laughter, and memories. Oliver grew closer to his father, who was no longer just a man of business, but a man who truly cared and showed up for his child. Ethan also noticed small changes in himself. He laughed more freely, appreciated the little moments, and understood that love was active, not just a feeling. Crawling on the floor with his son, playing with toys, laughing at small messes, these acts brought him joy in a way no boardroom ever could. One evening, as Oliver played with his cars on the floor of their home, Ethan joined him again. They built an elaborate track, complete with bridges and tunnels. The boy laughed until his cheeks hurt, and Ethan laughed alongside him, feeling a deep, enduring happiness. He realized then that wealth and power had their place. But the real treasure was here, in moments like this. Later that night, Ethan looked at Oliver sleeping peacefully. He whispered softly, "Thank you for letting me be your dad." He felt a calm resolve settle inside him. From that day forward, he promised himself that no matter what happened, he would always make time for these moments, the real moments that mattered. Ethan also understood the deeper lesson Mia had given him. Life was not about standing above others or rushing to the next goal. It was about presence, connection, and love. And that lesson changed everything. Months later, when Ethan thought back to that first day at Maggie's diner, he realized how much one simple act, a waitress crawling on the floor to help a child, had shifted his entire life. It had reminded him what truly mattered: being present, being kind, and choosing to love fully. Ethan Ward, the billionaire who once thought success was measured in money and status, had finally learned that real success was measured in moments, laughter, and the joy of a child's smile. And as he watched Oliver build another toy car track that night, Ethan knew that everything had changed, not because of wealth, not because of power, but because of love, presence, and a little act of kindness in a small diner that neither he nor Oliver would ever forget. From that day on, Ethan didn't just provide for his son. He showed up every single day. And in doing so, he found a happiness far richer than any fortune, the happiness of connection, family, and of truly living.